Commitment in the Middle East is to protect the right of Israel to exist permanently, and to exist in peace.
So that's interest number one. The other one is this.
The unimpeded flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz is a vital U.S. interest. It's critical to the economic health of the Western world.
Okay, so protect Israel and keep the oil flowing out of the Strait of Hormuz. Israel and oil. Of course, there are other interests in the region, but when it comes to long-term objectives, which justify the enormous amount of money the US spends on military and intelligence operations in the Gulf, it's primarily these two. Their involvement with Israel starts at the very beginning, with President Harry Truman.
I also antagonized a lot of people by recognizing the State of Israel as soon as it was formed.
This is from an account he gave after he left the White House about why he supported Israel so quickly.
And I'd seen some of the places where the Jews had been slaughtered by the Nazis. 6 million Jews were killed outright, men, women, and children, by the Nazis. And it was my hope that they would have a homeland where they could operate.
So he got to work.
I had to make a compromise with the Arabs and divide Palestine. The Jews wanted to chase all the Arabs into the Tigris and Euphrates River, and the Arabs wanted to chase all the Jews into the Red Sea. And what I was trying to do was to find a homeland for the Jews and still be just with the Arabs.
Did he figure out a solution for that? Well, not really. But anyway.
Something had to be done. We went ahead and done it, and had it done, and now it's working out. Eventually, I think we'll have them all satisfied.
Sure, sounds good. Israel's off and running. So what about the oil? Well, let's head to Iran in 1953.
The CIA's first success in bringing down a government came in Iran in 1953.
In the early 1950s, the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, nationalised the country's oil industry.
At that time, Iran's oil belonged to the British and a consortium of other foreign countries.
The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, now BP, was taken over by the government, which planned to use its profits to benefit the people of Iran.
The Americans, fearing that Iran's huge oil reserves would fall into Soviet hands, agreed to get rid of Mossadegh.
The CIA, under the control of a man with the ridiculous name of Kermit Roosevelt, wrote a letter ordering the dismissal of Prime Minister Mossadegh and gave it to the Shah of Iran to sign. When protests broke out against the Shah's decision, the Shah's army arrested the demonstrators. Then, the CIA agents went to work, literally paying people to protest in favour of the Shah.
Liberal use of dollar bills and Persian rial notes secured a mob which shouted support for the Shah. It was the CIA's first and most successful coup.
Mossadegh was arrested, and the Shah abolished democratic control of Iran.
The Shah never really shook off the image that he was a tool of the West.
The Shah wasn't the only oil-rich king that the US had a relationship with. They were also buddying up to the King of Saudi Arabia, building an oil alliance through the Arab American Oil Company, or Aramco. So, Israel's chugging along, and the oil is flowing. Both interests are balanced. Well, sort of.
The Middle East, and Arabs and Israelis at war with each other for the fourth time in 25 years.
25 years on from the establishment of Israel, there was still some dissatisfaction. But until 1973, Israel was never at risk of actually losing one of these wars.
On Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Egypt sends its Soviet-equipped troops slashing into Israel.
This time it's been different. The Arabs' new SAM missiles, provided by the Russians, have added a new factor to the air war. The first Israeli surrenders were moments of rare triumph for the Egyptian commanders.
For the first time in 25 years of conflict with Arabs, the Israelis tasted defeat.
The Israelis were seriously concerned that they were going to run out of firepower. They called the Americans for help. It was 1973, and the Americans were kind of in a panic of their own. President Richard Nixon was deep in the weeds of the Watergate scandal and was spending most of his time trying to save his own presidency. The increasingly panicked calls from Israel were taken by the newly sworn-in Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger.
The United States has a traditional friendship with Israel, which it will maintain.
The Israelis were asking him to resupply their weapons before their stockpiles ran out. Kissinger recalled there was hesitancy from the US military. They were concerned that resupplying Israel with weapons would undermine America's relationship with oil-supplying Arab states like Saudi Arabia.
The Defense Department was geared to the Saudi relationship and to the Arab relationship, and they did not want to produce a situation of crisis.
The situation was tricky. The Nixon administration's economic policies already had caused occasional minor domestic fuel shortages, and prices were on the way up. Meanwhile, the King of Saudi Arabia had warned that he would cut off oil supply to the US if Nixon supported Israel in the war, threatening to use what he described as an oil weapon. Henry Kissinger faced a choice: keep Israel alive or keep the oil flowing. He took the issue to Nixon.
And I said, I will not let Israel go down the tube.
American planes began arriving in Israel to resupply them with weapons. Israel survived. But what about the oil?
The Arabs had produced a weapon few thought they would ever use. OPEC, the Organization of Oil-Producing States, announced that oil production would be cut by 5% every month until Israel withdrew behind its 1967 borders.
They fired their oil weapon.
I think we can cut down production to, let's say, 20%. You think Europe or Japan or the United States can survive with this?
With a shock, the industrial nations realized just how vulnerable their dependence on oil had made them.
So that was the 1973 oil crisis. Just a few years later, there was another one involving America's old mate, the Shah of Iran.
Iran, because of the great leadership of the Shah, is an island of stability in one of the more troubled areas of the world.
Turns out that overthrowing a democratically elected government and propping up a puppet king isn't a foolproof way to ensure lasting oil supply.
The Shah in exile, his mighty army beaten in the streets, his secret service purged, his oil wells shut down.
This wasn't a deliberate use of an oil weapon. It was a US-backed regime collapsing into chaos.
Shipments stopped leaving Iran 6 weeks ago. 10% of the non-communist world's oil.
What emerged from the Islamic Revolution of 1979 in Iran was a regime which built a big part of its identity around the simple chant, "Death to Israel, death to America." Before long, the Arabs and Iranians were in a full-blown war, a conflict that disrupted oil supply for a decade. The balancing act had failed, and the results were extraordinary. In terms of those results, it's hard to know where to start, but let's just start in the United States.
To be sure that there is enough oil to go around for the entire winter all over the country, it will be essential for all of us to live and work in lower temperatures.
President Nixon asked everyone in the country to set their heating thermostats to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, or 20 degrees Celsius.
Incidentally, my doctor tells me that in a temperature of 66 to 68 degrees, you're really more healthy than when it's 75 to 78, if that's any comfort.
Air travel was also curtailed by 10%. Businesses were encouraged to decrease their operating hours. Nixon also signed a law pushing the entire country into daylight saving time in the middle of winter, in an effort to conserve energy in the evenings by shifting the sunset a bit later. Other laws were passed to encourage people to drive less.
May I suggest not buying until you have less than half a tank full?
New York City police officers were so low on fuel they could only use their cars in emergencies.
We're leaving our cars and patrolling on foot, keeping the cars in eye view, staying in the vicinity of the car in case there are any emergency runs.
New York's taxi drivers modified their vehicles to run on other types of fuel.
With the fuel crunch, fleet owners have been looking for ways to save gas, a modified diesel engine that doubles fuel economy.
Others abandoned their cars and rode bicycles instead, or sometimes tricycles.
Why do you ride that bicycle?
On account of the gas shortage, cannot get gas, so I decided to go buy a bicycle.
It's a whole lot cheaper than gas.
People even decided against putting up Christmas lights that year to save energy.
Usually I take my kids out to see all the lights. This year there were hardly any lights out to see.
The US had domestic oil supplies though, so could blunt the worst effects of this crisis. Other countries weren't so lucky.
This is going to be a very bleak winter for the British. Motorists have been asked to keep to a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit and not to drive on Sundays if they can avoid doing so.
As prices rose, petrol stations started running out of fuel because so many people were doing exactly what they always do at times like this.
Panic buying of gasoline by motorists has worsened the situation. Many filling stations have sold out.
The high price of fuel flowed into high prices for everything else.
Bread, fruit, vegetables, eggs, fish and meat all went up in price.
Maar het kan ook anders, zonder bonnen.
In continental Europe, fuel shortages drove some people to convert their cars to wind and pedal power. In Japan, neon lights were turned off across Tokyo.
There are petrol shortages. There are queues for fuel oil. There's panic buying, especially of toilet paper.
In India, the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi started travelling around in a horse-drawn carriage. In Australia, petrol was rationed based on whether your number plate ended in an odd or even number.
Officially, today was for the even numbers, but this didn't deter a high number of drivers with odd-numbered plates sitting through the long, hot queues.
Petrol station queues were common all across the world. There was some debate among the people in the queues about what the cause was.
I think it's just a symptom of a disease called capitalism.
The situation is caused by people using their credit cards.
There were lots of reasons for it, I suppose, but from a foreign policy perspective, there was one main cause. In both 1973 and 1979, the global economy paid the price for botched American intervention in Middle East politics, trying and failing to balance their interests in Israeli security and oil production. The oil crises of the 1970s were incredibly disruptive and chaotic. Each night, reporters in petrol station parking lots right across the country spoke about the pain they were causing everyday people. Just like today, only with bigger mustaches. Because they didn't just mean queues at petrol stations, they also contributed to massive inflation. As we discussed in our Black Swans episode about transport, the 1970s oil shocks caused a seismic shift in global energy and transportation policy, and have had huge implications for US foreign policy. Ever since, the US has been far more careful in their efforts to balance these two key interests in the Middle East, without triggering another crisis. They've been building strong relationships with Arab states in an effort to disarm the oil weapon. They've tried to foster peace agreements between Israelis and Palestinians.
Of a comprehensive peace settlement for the Middle East.
Ladies and gentlemen, the time for peace has come.
We mark the dawn of a new Middle East.
At times, the US has resorted to military action to try and stabilise the region. But before taking those steps, US presidents weighed the risks. Would it jeopardise Israeli security or oil supply? If the answer to either of those questions was yes, then they generally wouldn't do it. Meanwhile, the US has been trying to make itself immune from oil shocks by developing domestic oil supply.
We will drill, baby, drill.
Though, as we discussed in our last episode,
the world oil market is one market, and should Persian Gulf oil supplies be disrupted, the oil prices will rise for everyone.
I'm sure we'll have a productive discussion.
For years, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has pushed the US to prioritise Israeli security over oil.
I think it's the height of folly. It's the quest for peace at any price.
But US presidents, from Clinton all the way to Biden, have resisted. It's Israel's right, of course, to lobby the US government.
We must all stand together to stop Iran's march of conquest, subjugation, and terror.
The US government just isn't obliged to listen to them. But finally, a US president did listen.
Does anybody recognize this man?
And followed Israel into a war that was obviously going to interrupt oil supply without doing anything to prepare the global economy for the impacts. I don't know whether Donald Trump just didn't understand the delicate balance that every president for decades has been maintaining, or if he didn't care. But he picked a side, like Nixon and Truman. It's worth remembering that when Nixon made that choice, Israel was facing an immediate existential threat. That was not the case for Trump. He didn't grasp that the choice wasn't, should I bomb Iran or not, but was actually, should I do what Bibi Netanyahu wants, or do I want oil to stay under $100 a barrel? The balancing act has failed once again. I don't know how much like the 70s this is going to get. I'm just hoping that I don't have to get into disco.
Ordinary Australians with an extraordinary gift.
To share my love for piano to the world.
With such heartache,
I cope by playing the piano.
but such joy and love.
Darling, I'm only here for you.
Look at how she looks at him. I got goosebumps just then.
I did too. Holy moly.
With 5 musicians playing their way to an unforgettable concert.
We want this to be a beautiful moment.
The Piano, Sunday 7:30, or stream the full season on ABC iView.
The pursuit of truth can be challenging. Are you still reluctant to criticise the former president?
In what regard, please?
Clarity is key. You are also behaving illegally.
No, we are defending ourselves.
Have you ever made a mistake you really learned something from?
Of course, of course.
What's the worst case scenario?
This could lead to human extinction.
Use your voice. It's the only thing that's totally yours.
Every week.
It's there to be discovered.
All in one place.
7:30, Monday to Thursday, ABC TV and ABC iView. After 60 years, their story hasn't changed.
It was amazing. I couldn't believe it.
They were like a shape of saucer and they flew.
Australia's greatest UFO mystery.
We were told not to talk about it or we'd get detention.
The film couldn't be found. It was an empty film canister.
What really happened in Westall?
We just don't know.
I will never doubt what I saw.
Could we just find out what it was, please? That's all we want.
Australian Story, Monday.
Social media is where so many of us get our information, but can we rely on it? What's true and what's false?
Facts are so polar opposite. We can't even agree on how to determine what a fact is.
How technology is changing the way we think.
The end goal is to change the way we vote.
I follow disinformation across the globe.
A world where people don't trust anything. Who is that good for?
We don't want to sleepwalk into a future that nobody wants. Join me in this real-time information revolution.
The Matter of Facts, Tuesday 8:30 on ABC and ABC iView.
One day all of Australia will know my name. And sure enough, they did.
It doesn't get any higher than the High Court.
You shouldn't lock someone up without trial.
This was a big moment.
We mattered as people.
Dominoes were falling everywhere. It's my life you deciding on.
How dare they?
It did send a shockwave through the corridors.
It set the stage for the winning of a war.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap.
Yeah, you know the rest. But it's hard to imagine just what a big deal it was when humans first set foot on the moon in 1969.
Oh, that looks beautiful.
Have you been watching it?
Yeah, as much as I can.
The Eagle has landed.
And now we're about to head back to orbit the moon for the first time in more than 50 years with Artemis 2. But this time, does anyone care about going to the moon again? In fact, do you care about space exploration at all?
To be honest, not really interested in it.
No, not really. Because I know I'm not going to be going to space anytime soon. I think it's definitely an interesting topic, especially for the future, because we don't know what could happen with our Earth.
I mean, we haven't found anything there, so there's no point in going back. Well, I think we should probably explore further out.
Well, there is some of the moon that we haven't explored yet. Exploring that would be cool, but pouring a lot of money into it wouldn't be.
Think of the billions that we spend on literally everything else. Space exploration has again and again showed that it's practically always positive.
I think that we have the duty to protect our lands first before we go out and explore.
I think it's definitely important to study that, but I think it is more important to actually put funding into
our Earth because there isn't really a planet B.
It's true that space exploration isn't exactly cheap. Just the rocket system alone used to launch NASA's Artemis 2 mission costs $33 billion, while the Australian government has pledged $150 million to our moon program with Artemis, including $42 million for an Aussie lunar rover. So, is it worth it? Astronaut, engineer and Australian of the Year Catherine Bennell-Pegg obviously cares a lot about space, and she wants you to as well. That is amazing.
The cost of space is lowering, the ability for more people to be involved in space is increasing, and when we do spend money on space, it's like spending it on any other industry here on Earth. It creates jobs and investment.
Catherine says the dollars we spend in space have real benefits here on Earth.
When we go to space and explore, it's not about escaping the Earth, it's about helping us to see it more clearly, because what you can see and understand, you can better protect, right? So from this high point in the sky that is space, we can see phenomenon all around the world. We can see bushfires and floods, how our climate's changing, pollution. So soon across Australia, we'll get 000 coverage using satellites, and to help guide equipment, like farming equipment. Whenever you use your phone to make a payment, you're using satellites in space in real time.
But the possibilities go way beyond that.
So in Australia, we're doing a lot of research into plants in space, and we're learning how to make drought-tolerant crops. There's been therapies for cancer, for COVID, for Parkinson's. Understanding Alzheimer's has all been furthered through the work astronauts are doing in space.
Liftoff of the Falcon 9, go SpaceX.
Of course, it's not just governments going to space. The private space industry is huge and growing.
Taking up space!
So obviously there's money to be made. Although there are worries about it affecting our outer space environment. As well as planting things in orbit, several private companies are planning and testing tech to mine in space. But that's a long way off. First, it's back to the moon and then beyond.
So when humans look to go further to Mars, going to the moon first will help us learn to live and work in deep space.
Catherine says space exploration should always be about humans working together and trying to answer the biggest questions.
One of the mysteries when we go back to the moon is how the moon was formed. How was the Earth and the moon formed together?
And hey, you never know, maybe one day we'll find something or someone else out there.
I'm particularly excited on the aspect of knowing what's out there.
We could find alien life. That's the #1 thing. We've gotten close to on Mars. We found organic chemicals. They don't prove anything, but it makes it pretty likely that we're going to find something soon.
We found more than 6,000 planets in our neighbourhood. So the likelihood just on odds is it's likely out there. Well, I can tell you that I'm pretty sure as astronauts who would have been briefed if we were likely to get a knock on the door of the space station, we never got that briefing, so I'm quite confident we've never been contacted before.
Are you saying that you would tell me, Catherine, if you had discovered alien life and been told this? Because I don't know if you're going to reveal that on BTN Hive, but...
I think it would be too big a secret for me to keep, to tell you what.
Good to know.
What's your message to the Trump administration?
Iran's hidden nuclear agenda.
The elimination of all nuclear scientists in Iran is a major setback for the project.
The secrecy.
What we don't know is what Iran will do next.
And the global stakes.
The Iranian military is actually mocking the president's claims.
President Trump has said that Iran was on the verge of a bomb. Is that the case?
Four Corners, Monday, ABC and iView.
One day all of Australia will know my name. And sure enough, they did.
It doesn't get any higher than the High Court.
You shouldn't lock someone up without trial.
This was a big moment.
We met at a split.
Dominoes were falling everywhere. It's my life you deciding on.
How dare they?
It did send a shockwave through the corridors.
It set the stage for the winning of a war.
theatre we make, it's uncompromising, it's urgent, it's visceral.
For some, the world's a stage.
We need to start thinking like a business.
For others, it's a spreadsheet.
We're not going to have someone telling us there's no money for the things we need to make our art.
Are we not more than human resources?
Margie. Oh, don't clap that.
Anne Edmonds and Kitty Flanagan in a brand new comedy, Bad Company, starts April 26 on ABC TV and ABC iView.
Questions. They've never been more important. So the